Black and brown folks, it is not your responsibility to carry and or teach everything about the Black and or brown culture. And so when I sit down with any leadership, they are not Black and or brown, or if something happens within the news to this day, I pick up the phone or send an email and say, do not ask your Black and brown employees anything today.
And we are recording once again. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning, Fenton. How is everything, sir? Good afternoon, actually. How's it going?
It is a little later than usual. Everything is fantastic. Want to get right into it. Want to welcome everyone to Products of Circumstance. This is the podcast with Ken Skeen and myself, Fenton Joseph. We discuss mental health and mindset matters through the lens of Black men. This show is unscripted, unfiltered, and mostly unedited. We choose our topics randomly, but today we're going to do things a little bit different. We have a guest with us today, and so we're going to dive into their story and take you along on a little journey there. But first, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And most importantly, please share with somebody who's on their personal development journey. And with that being said, Ken, why don't you introduce our guest?
So our amazing guest of the day is Miss Leslie Short. Good afternoon, Leslie.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Good afternoon. We don't have a studio audience, so there's no clapping, but I'll finger snap.
We clap for ourselves.
That's right. So now, Leslie, you are an extremely accomplished and experienced individual who comes to us by way of Mr. Kenneth Skeen. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your origin story, if you will, how you got into what you do, how you serve the people, and we'll take it from there.
Yes, thank you. I have a crazy background. I started, my first career as classical ballet dancer. Many people know that, but I was chosen at the age of 7 to be trained as a classical ballet dancer. And, many people said, well, you're probably not going to get accepted. They don't normally accept little Black girls. Long story short, I was accepted, trained with Pennsylvania Academy of Ballet, then, went from there, started performing. I turned professional at the age of 12, spent time I was with Joffrey Ballet on scholarship there. Then, did the Vegas thing for a hot second because everyone's got to pass through Vegas at some point, right? And as a dancer, and then went to Europe. And when I got to Europe, I never came back. It was 10 and a half years in Europe, and then 3.5 in Japan, owned a business in Japan. And then finally said, maybe America knows what to do with me, and maybe I'll come back. And came back and produced for television. And again, everyone said, you're not going to get a gig in television because you don't have a communications degree. I got a gig in television, and it was unique. It was definitely unique. But, all of that being around culture, doing television, then in fashion, and then running fashion companies and president of PR, marketing and advertising, really led me to build a Cavu group. But before that, I'd already built 2 other companies here in the States, KI Media and Ascend Bereavement Management. And I just think all the skills that you learn in life and all the skills that you learn as you study, I really couldn't take hearing diversity, equity, inclusion being thrown around as buzzwords. It's like, you know what? Enough. It's not that difficult. Stop telling me you can't find people. I'm one. I'm sitting right here. One ask another one, goes to another one. Stop it. And so
did that stem from, sorry to cut across you, but this is really helpful. Did that stem from your experience in other industries? Like, did you see diversity, being around the world, traveling and working in different places? And then you came back to America and was like, hey, why can't you guys do it? Is that what happened? Or?
Well, I mean, look, I was the only Black woman living in some countries. So diversity, we have to be careful about that. Diversity is also language. It's not only skin color, but there would be models that would come in, but there was very few females that lived in a lot of the countries unless they were in the military. So it was weird. I was performing in theater and I would be up on billboards, but no one would sit next to me on a bus. And so I understood, the first time I was called the N-word was from construction guys on my way to the post office to mail a letter back home. And instead of freaking out, I said, well, if I'm the first one you've seen, you're going to see me every day. And I wrote a letter home every single day to pass by that post office. And I was like, because there's little girls and little boys that have dogs and water after them before me, you know, that went after them. And so I've earned my right here. I belong here. You don't get to tell me where I belong. And so that's the way I always looked at it. And when I came back to America, it was at the cusp of the 90s of hip hop and stores and clothing companies coming in. And I sat at those corporate tables when they said, they're going to steal. Are we sure we want to let them in? And I would say, well, who are them and who are they? They wouldn't answer. And I would hold their feet to the fire. And they were like, but not you, Leslie. And I was like, well, then not me, then who?
Right.
And I would push. And I would push to make sure that models that were hired were, you know, cross-cultural. And that was something that was just always very important to me, because you can't say you're speaking to a consumer and you want to speak to a quarter of a consumer.
Why was that important to you? Where'd that come from? That boldness to speak out?
You know, I was born, I think I was born that way. My parents set the tone that I could do whatever I wanted to do, and whatever I decided to do, be the best at it, whether it was going to, you know, sweep the streets or be on stage. And that I always had a voice. I didn't need to wait for someone to give me a voice. I was told very early on my voice mattered. And so I had no problem speaking up for myself and for others when we were on tour. And they put us in horrible hotels and said, you're going to stay here. And I was like, absolutely not. We're not dancing 2 shows a night and coming back into this.
You were that one. You were that one. That was like, nah, we're not doing this. No.
Well, I got my parents' credit card. I get that.
I actually do have a question. You did work for a company in the city before starting Cavu Group. What actually inspired you to say, you know, because you were there for a while. You were with that company, that organization, or I don't want to start name dropping right now, with that friend of yours for a while. But then you decided one day, you know, I want to go do this venture that I've had on my mind, and which you created Cavu Group. What really inspired you to say now is the time and take that leap? Because a lot of, you know, people are scared to take a leap sometimes. What made you take that leap to say, I'm gonna leave this foundation of security, let's say, and now start something new again?
Well, it wasn't the first time I've done that. You know, I opened up a business in Japan where I was, you know, they call it gaijin foreigner, a woman, a Black woman, a woman with a mouth, like the line, it could go on. So it wasn't the first time I did that. And when I was with the same person before, and we can call it was Damon, and when I was with Fubu, I started KIM Media, my event firm and design firm. And he used to always say, don't get so big you leave me. And after 10 years, I said, it's time for me to go. I've done all I can do. Now I want to go do something else. I want to be creative. And when I came back in to help him with Shark Group, I was still working as a consultant. But I was deep in so many different things as I was still running my other company. But this was something that was really on my spirit. It was really sitting in meetings at the level that I am now and hearing people still say they can't find African-American or Latino, or they don't know how to deal with people with disabilities. And it just really was just like, this is not brain surgery. Why is this an excuse? Why is this not being looked at as an add-on? Human beings aren't an add-on. We're a foundation to any company. And I just said, I didn't like what was out there in the DEI space. And I said, I'm just going to build this differently. But I really focus on culture, because your culture is what stems from your foundation. And DEI is part of that culture. It's part of the foundation. And so I go in and I really look from the mailroom to the boardroom and say, what are you doing? Who are you speaking to? Because you can't be fabulous outside and your inside's a hot mess.
Right. Oh, wait. Some people viewing or listening right now may not know the acronym for DEI. Can you please explain that? Because there are people in the audience that really just do not know.
Yes, and I'm not mad at that. And it's becoming alphabet soup. So it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, let me break down what diversity is, because I think that gets confused as well. Because for some reason, people say diversity and they're like, Black folks. Diversity is race, gender, LGBTQ plus, disability, sight seen, and those disabilities unseen, and veterans is still underneath that label. Equity equals access. Are you giving me the right tools, the right opportunities to know how I can advance? Inclusion is not being invited in. Inclusion is being invited in and given the right tools to succeed.
Okay.
It's not belonging. This is my pet peeve, so I'm going to say it here.
Mm-hmm.
You decide where you belong. No one else in this world can tell you where you belong. That's a gut feeling from yourself. I hope I broke that down properly.
Oh, no. Love the passion. Love the passion.
I'm going to get on my
No, it's
soapbox.
good. No. You know what it is, though? But people don't know. And it is becoming just a... I don't want to, I'm not trying to downplay anything, but everything becomes a fad that people just start throwing out these letters and saying, you know, I'm supporting the motion or supporting the cause, but really don't know the grit.
Right.
So,
or they're making it to what they want it to be.
Right.
You know, it was the fad, trend, hire all Black folks right after George Floyd's murder. And I will be the one that says, please do not hire anyone Black or brown. Please
if
don't
you're not
hire
qualified.
No, period.
Oh,
Because
okay.
see, our insides aren't prepared for a cultural shift. You've not prepared yourself. So all it has done is set people up to come in and not succeed.
Right.
And I want people to walk in and have a foundation to succeed. Because see, now what's happening 3.5 years later, people are shouting, told you it didn't work. Well, that's because you didn't commit to it.
That's been my issue with DEI from the very start. And, you know, I used to work in the advertising world, and I certainly had my share of challenges as a Black man working in the advertising industry in New York City. And, you know, when you started hearing about DEI, and I mean, it sounds bad, whatever, it is what it is. I said, this probably isn't going to work out because the right people need to be behind it, right? So in corporations, you have stakeholders, you have people who champion different causes, and you need the right people. Okay, if I'm saying that things aren't working well for me for whatever reason, be it that I'm a certain gender, a certain race, certain abilities, and I'm raising my hand and saying this needs to be fixed. Well, I didn't break the system. I didn't create the culture. I came into this culture, so it's not really. I don't know if it's really like. If you genuinely think this stuff is going to work, if you really put it on the individuals to fix it themselves, which leads me to my question, and I'll just say it like it is because I own my own company. No one's going to fire me. who really is supposed to be fixing these issues? Is it white people in power? Is it Black people? Is it people with? I'm going to leave it actually right there because, and here's the reason why. Because we understand that diversity runs the gamut. As you stated so eloquently previously, this show is about Black men and our experience. So I'm going to leave it there because I feel in my lived experience working in corporate America that the people who were in charge of the initiatives were Black and brown people who didn't actually have the authority to influence or drive change within the organization. So if you put people in power and don't give them any power, they're just a figurehead. They can't actually get anything done, which, as you said, sets them up for failure. So what are we really doing here? Who's actually supposed to be taking charge?
It has to be a combination. Clearly, leadership has to invest in it. When I say invest, I mean invest in whoever they're going to have spearheading. They have to invest in the other managers, 9 out of 10 white. They have to invest in them, educating them on the shift of how they're moving in the culture and what it means and how to hire, how to fire, how to look beyond what they're comfortable with. That has to start from leadership. And then when you put that person in charge, they need a budget, they need a staff, they need to be C-suite. So they need to have that direct line there because you can give them all the power to do all these affinity groups that drive me absolutely nuts And all I'm doing, I don't need to sit and talk to another Black person, tell me what the issue is. We know what the issue is. I need now to have the issue explained to leadership in the language for which they understand, and will open up the budget to execution. That the HR person has the conversation, and we work with them on how to, not even how to hire, how to interview, where to be looking for people beyond what they're used to. So when I go into companies, I will always say, I deal with leadership, but I also ask the Black, brown folks, what do you want? Because if you don't tell me what you want,
right,
it's not going to happen. And I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes I get stares, and I'm like, you can't stare at me, because I do have their ear. So I need you to honestly think, is it pay equity? Is it promotions? What is it? Because then I can go in and figure out where the steps are stopping for you to keep climbing. I get that, to do that, but I can't do it if you can't truly explain what's going on, so I can start dissecting. And because I can say to leadership, fish stinks from the head. Guess who's the head? And they're like, no, Leslie, no. And I'm like, yeah, you have to listen. And now we've got to have these leadership conversations. Then we have to have the manager conversation. Like it's a step process. It's no one person. It's a combination of everyone.
Okay.
It has to be a real commitment.
All right, so I'm gonna keep going. Ken, do you have anything you want to say? Sorry.
Actually,
you know me, I'll just keep going.
No. I love it, Fenton. I love it. I was going to ask, so how do you define with your clients what a successful meeting is, in the sense of, I'm not sure, is it like a one-time thing when you go with a client and you're with a corporation? Are you there for a week? Are you there for a month? Is it a long-term, we check back in once in a while, or is it like a 2-hour session? Like, how do you decide, or how does the corporation or company that brings you in to discuss, I guess, the empowerments of people, like how do you decide how long they need?
I'm always the first one to say, if you're looking for a 1 day, you can pay me my 1 day fee, but it will do absolutely nothing.
Okay. Well, yeah.
It's a process. And so I'm with companies now that I've been with for 3 years, and we have moved the needle through that time. So there's one company that I speak with the CEO every single Friday, and we go through from top to bottom, and I have access to the staff throughout. Okay. There's another one that we have now shifted to, I'm kind of quarterly with them. But when anything happens or any posts need to go out or holiday celebration, everything still has to be run through me to make sure they're still on the right track.
Okay.
And again, I have access to the staff. And so from the president of the company to the board to the staff. And that's the way that I set it up, because I cannot go in and not speak to the staff and understand what they're saying to me, because what they're saying, what leadership is saying, and what the board is seeing is 3 different things. So in order for it to be successful, I have to have a better understanding of where and how the staff feels. And so sometimes that's one-on-one meetings with 300 and something people.
Right. Now, I wonder, does the staff sometimes feel like they may be reprimanded for saying something against the company policy? And how transparent do you feel like some of these employees are with you? Maybe because they, all right, because
why?
Maybe someone might be worried they might lose their job because they're saying something about the upper management. Number
one, I'm very clear with everyone that the conversation is confidential. Okay. I'm pulling what's being said. I'm not attributing it to someone. I may have to say departments so we know where we're going if there's, major issues, but I'm not using their name.
Okay.
I've had CEO go, Leslie, is it so-and-so? Is it so-and-so? And I say, it doesn't matter who it is. What's matter is it's happening. The next matter is how we're going to fix it.
Mhm.
And so I think people come in, and when I speak to them, I'm clear. I don't work here. I'm going to be out of this box at some point. So if you really have something to say, I would advise you to tell me. Now, I'll get new people that are nervous, but sometimes by the time I get called in, people are tired.
Okay.
People are exhausted. They want to see change. So they do take the opportunity to be honest with asking questions, being outright. And I think my reputation has shown that I go in and my focus is really about shifting. Look, at the word transparency, I don't like that word, because if it's not your company, you're never going to have transparency. What you're asking for is visibility.
Okay.
What you're asking for is communication. That's what most people are usually asking for. No company is going to open up all their books and be like, here's how much we make.
No.
So let's make sure our wording is proper when we go into these meetings. How do you ask for a raise if you need to ask for a raise? Because on the back end, I'm already writing the Crown Act in, and I'm writing pay equity in with HR folks.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
I'm going in and I'm going through handbooks. And I'll tell them, I'm looking at low-hanging fruit. What are the things I can make changes on now while I deal with the bigger systemic changes in the process of the coming months?
Mm-hmm.
Everything matters. The bathroom matters. The bathroom signs matter.
Mm-hmm.
And your pronouns, if that's what you choose to have an option in your email, matters. Being able to have the tools that you need if you are dyslexic or you need extra tools to get your work done, that matters. And so I'm looking at those types of things in the very beginning of what can we move to show that there's a commitment, as I'm working on the side, building other things with leadership.
And those might be some of those, kind of metrics, KPIs, milestones, whatever you want to frame it as, that help people to see that change is taking place.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be small. Like I'm a Christian, and you get saved, you stop drinking, maybe you stop cursing, maybe you stop hanging out in clubs, going home with different people every night, whatever. That's kind of like Christianity 101. It's kind of like
I'm a chaplain and a minister, so I'm gonna let you keep going. Go on now.
Praise God. So that's like 101 stuff. It's like, yeah, we know you don't do that. But you know what? Your attitude still sucks. Your outlook on life is still negative. You don't have the joy that's supposed to come from, having this relationship with Jesus. You don't seem like you're really transformed on the inside. And, these are the things that take time. And a lot of the stuff that Ken and I talk about, it takes time. We talk about, we give people practical tools, things like meditation, journaling, gratitude, things like that. Okay, those are practical tools that you can put in place, but you have to understand, folks, that it takes time to see the change. You might start doing something a little bit differently today, but it's long-term change is what you seek. And I think that's one of the challenges with DEI is that people don't acknowledge that changing culture takes years, because the people at the top, they have their beliefs. Mm-hmm. Their beliefs have to be changed, right? Again, just like we talk about personal development stuff. Say again?
Yeah. There had to be a shift of understanding. They have to understand that it's more than about them.
You are what you do, and you do what you are. You say what's in your heart and what's on your mind. So with all that, we as individuals, because corporations are just a bunch of individuals who got together for a common goal.
Yes.
If we all have these things inside of us that manifest as racism, ableism, and ageism, that's coming from within. The phone call is coming from inside the house. We need to fix ourselves so that collectively as a group, we can be more loving and inclusive and kind to one another. And again, these are things that people don't understand. It's like, we're not just talking about, putting something in a handbook that says we're going to move different. You as a person need to really be sold out or buy in and start to move different. You have to examine yourself. And this is why I had asked the question, like, who is it that really needs to be in charge? And I love your answer. And I agree with you 100% that it's on both sides. I'm gonna say this last thing, and then I'll kick it back to you. For people who are on the employee side, we're not in leadership, how can they help to drive change within the culture? How can they speak? What does it look like for them to speak up in the face of, well, that's my boss, I don't want to get fired, I don't want retaliation? And also, how can people identify, what's a good way of saying this? What does it look like, to win? What does a win look like for somebody who's got a wheelchair? And it's not just about, all right, fine, you put the ramp in there and now I can get in, but I still get the looks. I still get people making jokes. I still, you know what I mean? Like,
see, a win is individual.
You're so good.
A win is not a group. That's where people mess up. This is not a group activity.
Okay.
Only you can decide what works for your spirit. Okay. So what a win is for someone else, I may go, not so much. For the folks that when they have the opportunity to speak up, they do need to speak up. Everyone may not have it. Everyone may not have me or someone that comes in and spends time the way that I spend time with companies, right? So what you have to do is, who in the company is your buddy or that senior person or middle person that you respect? Can you go have a conversation with them? Can you tell them, yo, your man Joe is out of pocket? I don't know how to say it to him without it turning into something. Is there a way that you can help me have this conversation, or you can just let him know he's out of pocket? And then you go the HR route, then you go the other route. But see who you have that has an understanding on what equity looks like, inclusion feels like, because inclusion is a feeling. It's not an action. It's an action to a feeling. Let me put it that way. So you do have to, but it's not your responsibility to carry it. I want to make that very clear. Black and brown folks, it is not your responsibility to carry and or teach everything about the Black and or brown culture. And so when I sit down with any leadership, when they are not Black and or brown, or if something happens within the news, to this day, I pick up the phone or send an email and say, do not ask your Black and brown employees anything today.
Thank you.
And now they know, well, let's see, someone would say, I didn't look at it like that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I was about to go do something. Thank you. I will let that rest today. Because again, we're assuming that they think about us and what's happening within our culture on the streets or in our homes. They are not, because it is not their world. Therefore, there are times where you may have to say, at this moment, the way the world has twisted, I'm going to need an extra 10 minutes. I'm going to get all of this to you, but I need a moment. And then do your work. But on the flip side, everything that happens, we can't yell, you're racist, you're racist, you're racist either, because I'm exhausted of those calls.
That's a burden too.
Yeah, it is exhausting.
Right. So there has to be that. I am not here to teach yet. If you don't let someone know how you want to be treated, then how are they supposed to know? So it's that fine line of not teaching, but being able to stand and say, that was offensive to me. And here's why. And then step back. Because if you don't let them know, how do they know?
They're not going to know.
Yeah. I mean, even for myself, I'm still learning. My wife, so Tiff, teaches me a lot to stop explaining myself. And because it's tiring. It's exhausting. And you just made the comment of we shouldn't be the ones that have to explain every situation to them. To them, I mean Caucasian people
Mm-hmm.
when they need answers. But it's very tiring sometimes when they can't understand, and we have to. Me myself, I needs to understand more that the reason they don't understand is because what you just said. It's not their life. They don't live it. Like when I have to tell my friends sometimes, you know, I was a little nervous because the police officer's behind me too long. Well, why are you nervous for? Who cares? You're not doing anything. And I make the comment, well, I'm driving while black, and they think it's a joke. And I'm like, I'm not joking. And I have to sit there and explain what it means to drive while black or shopping while black or whatever it may be while black and being a black man. I have 3 sons now. One of them is 13, about to be 14. One's 8. And we had to have the police talk with them.
Yes.
Imagine having a police talk when he was 7. I had a police talk with a 7-year-old. And I think he understood a little bit. I'm going to have to redo it again to let him know, listen, when I was 10 years old, my parents took us from East Flatbush, Brooklyn to Jericho. And I had a police officer stop me for playing in the park because he didn't believe I lived in the neighborhood. I explained that to my white friends. They're like, what are you talking about? No, you're exaggerating. Like, no, he followed me home to make sure I lived in that house.
Right.
But it's exhausting. It's just so exhausting some days.
And so part of what my job is when I'm working with the Board of Education is to ask the question, how many of you are aware of the talk? I ask those questions to them because they need to know, because you're educators. So how do you not know about the talk? And so I break things down in a way of, here's what it is for every day. This is not a PhD conversation that I have with folks. You know, I had a client the other day say, well, Leslie, why don't you speak to the staff? I said, oh, you want the little black girl to speak to the staff? When somebody just said you got issue with black and brown folks? Nah, man, you're going to do that. Man up. And I said it just like that. And he was like, oh, you're right. You're right. And because it's a comfort level of passing it on or you can go do it. No, stand in your shoes and you stand up and you do it.
Right.
What do you find works? Which approach, and I can already kind of guess the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway, just in case somebody's thinking. What approach do you find works best? I'm a straight shooter. I am such a straight shooter. I have neither the time nor the patience nor the inclination to sugarcoat anything. I had a gentleman that I worked with, a colleague, and he said something to me that I found to be explicitly racist. And I pulled him aside in a room, and he was my superior at that, my direct superior. And I pulled him aside in a room and I said, this is not okay. I found it offensive. Here's why. And please make sure that never happens again. And it was a very constructive conversation. He didn't seem to immediately get it. He was like, well, really? Well, why? Why would you think that's offensive? But I think it was productive. And moreover, I feel comfortable telling people I have a boundary, I have thresholds, I'm completely okay with doing that. Not everybody is, but when I guess I'm kind of going back to my previous question. It's like, when you're in that position and you feel like, I don't know if I could say something, what's the right path for people to take?
So again, it's going to be different paths, right? So for some people, they're going to be able to settle themselves. And no matter who you are, I think you should always take a beat and settle yourself so that what you say is clear.
Yeah, give it a minute. Sit on it.
And it's not from emotion. Right. It's not from emotion because you want someone to hear you and not see the emotion.
Right.
That's one of the main things. If you're someone that's like, I'm nervous to say something, document it. Go write it down. Document it the day of the thing and say, is this a one-off? Then I may let it go because I don't want to start a confirmation. Oh, this is not a one-off. My pad has 3. Now I'm going to go find someone that can have my back to have this conversation. Or one, you may go to a superior right away that you may be cool with because it may be your superior. So you may have to go somewhere else that's their level and say, I really need help having this conversation. You're cool with them. How can I have them understand what's happening? And so whether you're direct or you get someone to walk that path with you, or you document it and take it in to whoever you need to take it into, the supervisor or supervisor above them or HR, depending on how you're set up. it's necessary because issues don't go away by sweeping them under and be like, oh, well, someone else will deal with it. Until you leave, you still dealing with it.
I actually want to add to that. All right, so I'm in the sales profession, and I'm not going to mention the stores, of course, because it's very small.
Do it. Just kidding.
No.
Just
So
kidding,
there was one store I was at where the general manager, I was a sales manager there, and the general manager happened to talk to a salesperson and said, "Hey, what's up, my?" And right, N-word for people who are listening. And I took offense to it. So I actually did pull him into the room, the general manager, and I said, "What do you can't say that." He's like, "Yeah, but I always say to him, yada, yada, yada." 3 days later, it just so happened they no longer needed me. And unfortunately, in the state of New York, you can be let go for any reason.
Right.
Of course, my wife wanted me to get lawyers and everything. I'm like, "Babe, sorry. Unfortunately, in this business, it's very small. And if you try to sue a dealership, you will get blackballed from everywhere." That was one dealership. Another dealership, I had the owner and his brother show me a Halloween picture, and they were dressed up as Ku Klux Klan members. And he said, "Hey, Ken, how cool are these outfits? Don't they look realistic?" And I said, "Why do you think I would like this?
Really?
Why do you think this is cool to me?" I'm dead serious. I'm not joking.
Wow.
And I came home to my wife, and probably 2 days later, I ended up just leaving that place also. But that's 13 years in this business. Those were two different dealerships. Again, one of them, it was the owner and his brother. The other dealership was the GM. And yeah, it happens.
So does everyone know about the EEO?
Yeah. I don't remember exactly what it means, but
So it's the employment place. If you go and file a complaint with the EEO, they have to, by law, go research that company. Now, I'm also a mediator, so I've done some of these federal mediations with corporations. And so they have to go through a process. Nobody wants to go through a process. Now, do they come out on the other side? Some yes, some no. Do they come out with a few dollars less? Most do. Some of them chalk it up. But that's also not a reputation they want to have. You know, have you heard of Glassdoor?
Yes.
Okay, so a lot of people will write reviews on Glassdoor. And I know companies that, oh, I need to get these reviews off. I need to get the reviews off. I'm like, then you need to do better.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so, but everyone has their limit. I can't tell you what your limit will be. When I was in Europe and they would take the wigs and take the brown wigs away and leave me the blonde or the white wig, joking. And I picked my little bag up and said, well, you just lost your principal dancer, and was walking out when the star of the show, a French guy, was like, wait a minute, what's going on? And I told him in my half broken French, and luckily he spoke enough English. And he became my advocate. And he went, and not only did it backfire on the people playing the joke for me, I ended up having my own hairstylist and makeup artist for the rest of that season. And he vowed that any other season I came back, if I chose to come back, I would always have my own.
Right.
So it's also the fact of when you do your work and you are who you are, you need to stand in the power for what you walk in every day. Because see, we come in and we do this.
Mm-hmm.
That old school, don't be seen, don't be heard, keep it down. Or we come in angry. What?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you do need someone to have your back, folks don't want to step out to have your back.
Yeah.
But when you come in and you stand in your power, whatever that is, and the power is you woke up that morning.
Yeah.
You stand in who you are, that when you go to someone and say, this does not work for me, this is not working for me, at some point, it's the same question you asked me. When do you know it's time to go? Because some places just may not change.
Right.
They may not shift. They may not understand because they do not want to. And that comes from your gut and from your knowing. Now, I understand everyone doesn't always have the position to walk out the door without something. Then what are you building to get ready to walk out the door? Are you building your resume? Are you going on Coursera and taking a free class so you can have a $49 certificate to add to your LinkedIn? What are you making? What's the investment now you're going to make in yourself when you know it's time for you to get the heck on out of there?
Yeah, don't be
So that's why,
powerless.
right. That's why I say this always works two ways. I'm not sitting waiting for anyone to hand me anything. You don't think I deserve that? Oh, you keep your little VP president position. Wave at you at the cocktail next year because I'm going to be over there.
Amen to that. I tell people, but maybe because I'm an entrepreneur and I have this conversation a lot, because my wife is a corporate employee and I used to be a corporate employee and I get it. You have a job, you have an employer, everybody needs a job, you need money. I get it. At the same time, a big part of the reason why I left the corporate world was I was so tired of getting the rug pulled out from under me. Advertising has a high turnover, and even other businesses that I was in, I would get let go so many times. I think I was trying to tell me something. God definitely used my job as a means of, changing my life, because all my testimonies revolve around my job and getting let go and how he brought me through because I didn't have any money. Anyway, you need to level up. You can't be the victim all the time. Things, they will happen. You can't just always let them happen to you. The last time I left my job, I said, I can't be in a position to let somebody take my livelihood. Right. That was my motivation. I said, I can't do this. I'm good at my job. I know I'm very good at it. But if I'm always going to be on the chopping block at any given point in time, that's just the nature of this business, then I need to get out of this business and I need to bet on myself. And that may seem like, I don't know, like something that only a certain, swath of the population is capable of doing. I don't have a college degree. I didn't go to college. I never wanted to go to college. I'm just somebody who reads a lot of books. That's what they do in college, right? They read. So if I read books, then I can get information too. And I've never been afraid to try. You have to put yourself in a state of mind where you see value in yourself. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter if you want to be an entrepreneur or not. What matters is that you bet on yourself. If that means you're always interviewing, going for that next position, maybe the one that you don't even think that you're qualified for, it's mindset. Yeah. Because if you're constantly saying to yourself, well, people keep treating me this way and that's just the way that it is. Well, that's a program that you're telling yourself too. You're right. Telling yourself you're just going to have to deal with this. And the answer is no. Whatever it was in you had different programming as a kid. And I said, I'm not putting up with this. I'm not dealing with this. And that's the way that I raised my daughter. And we're having another one and I'm going to raise her the same way. And that's the way that my wife is. And that's why I love the person that she is. And we got married. I said, oh no, she's a no nonsense type of person. Listen, don't come for my wife if she did not ask for you. she won't play no games.
Can we go back for a second? Because I said this to someone else the other day and the man hasn't spoken to me since. My feelings are not hurt. Yeah. So he was speaking about a job fair and he said, oh, I'm going to do this job fair. It's going to be for underprivileged kids and Black and brown. And I said, that's great, but are you just trying to give Black and brown kids a job? Or are you trying to build careers? Because see, I don't want to hear anything about a job. We're past a job. And I think that comes from our culture as well. It's not about a job. What career do you want? What are you building? And I think if we look at what we're building as opposed to where we're going each day, that mind shift is very different. And we need to instill that in our children. And for a whole lot of the adults that's still out here, it's not about a job.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said. Because, at the end of the day, and that, again, this is something that was really important for me. And Ken, I don't know how you feel, but for me, I wanted to have, I want a life resume, not just a work resume. And I started to see, because similar to yourself, I worked in a lot of different places, did a lot of different things. I'm a creative. I've been a music producer for a long time. I build websites. I do this, I do that. And I said, well, what I see the common threads. I see those skills that are being applied across every single job that I've had. And I said, all right, now I understand who I am. I understand the value that I have and the skills that I bring to the table, and I could apply them anywhere. Once I realized that I could be inserted anywhere and still make an impact and still be valuable, I said, well, what's a job? it's the job isn't the focus. It's building this life resume of creating impact. I just happen to be doing it here today
Right.
for these 2 years or 3 years at this rate of income or whatever the case is. Because 10 years from now, I'm probably not going to be doing the same thing that I'm doing today, but I'm still going to be impactful. I'm still going to be teaching. I'm still going to be bringing value, and I'm also going to be growing. So as I grow, right, because I'm not in myself a monolith, I'm going to find new passions and new things that I want to do and express myself in different ways. And you know, it's an interesting thing because my dad worked at the same job for 46 years, and that was a blessing for our family, right?
Right.
He got up and he put on his pants and he went to work every day and he came home and he brought the check home and we were well provided for. And so it doesn't mean that staying in one place is wrong or bad. It means your view of yourself, because he didn't see himself as an employee. He was an artist. He was an electrical engineer, but he loved what he did and he found joy in it. And it was an expression of who he is. And those are the things that even as a blue collar worker, he still was able to teach us about ourselves. I'm gonna leave it there.
No, so I do something called I am.
I am.
You cannot say what you do for a living.
Love that.
Okay.
Do you know how hard that is for people? To say I am and whatever it is. African-American woman, lover of life, faithful, enjoy working out. I'm a little feisty. I am. And I ask people to do that. And they have a hard time not saying what they do for a living. So is it what you do for a living or are you living? And that's a conversation we need to start having as well. Now we have a generation that's just like, if it doesn't work for me in my life, that's not what I do. There's something to that, but you also need to work.
Which I kind of applaud this new generation coming up with. If I don't like it, I'm moving on. Because I was brought up in my parents' generation of, make sure you go to work and support your family and, try to live your life when you can't. But this new generation is saying, yeah, we don't need corporate America. We can travel if we want to. We can do what we want. At some point, you're going to have to get some kind of stability, I do feel. But we weren't raised that way. And I actually do love that my older two, 16 and 14, he'll be 14 soon, 16 and 14, that they have a different aspect of what, I guess, young adulthood is supposed to be compared to what we think it's supposed to be.
Yeah, it is definitely different. Look, there is no one's sitting waiting for the corner office in the gold watch.
Right.
Tiffany clock.
Right. Like I wrote
the
that
Tiffany clock.
So someone said to me, well, Leslie, what happens if leaders don't understand that their employees are thinking differently? I said, well, they need to think that no one's sitting waiting for that corner office and to go watch anymore. No, that's not what's important. People are thinking differently because people want differently. They want a different tone to the way that they live. They want to have options if they want to go travel. They want to have self-worth. They want to have a voice in the direction of where things are going. Now, some are ready for that, some are not, but some will pick and choose. And there are ways to make money and a lot of money, never having stepped into a college. Now, it is a different mindset and being open to the different mindsets and reading the room to who's in your room and using people to the best of their abilities instead of you deciding what may be best for them. That will shift the culture.
I love that. I think that's a great wrap up.
There we go. Actually, before we do completely close off, Leslie, please just inform the audience of, I'd like for you to inform them about your book, where they can purchase a copy, your Cavu group website, any upcoming events that you might be coming up soon.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, the book is on Amazon and online. It's called Expand Beyond Your Current Culture. Hint, hint. And you can reach me on all social media at the Cavu Group, TheCavu Group. And you can always catch me on my podcast, Visibility Unlimited. And I'm starting a new portion about social impact and what's some people are doing some amazing things in this world. So check that out on the Visibility Unlimited podcast as well.
Which, Fenton, I'm sure with your background, you'll be having links for all these, right?
Of course. Links will be.
My links are very easy. That's the best thing. The Cavu Group. Just make sure you say the Cavu Group, because the Cavu Group is a company. That's not me.
The Cavu Group.
The links will be in the description. And
do the thing. Do
listen,
the thing, Fenton. Do the thing.
Leslie, you are an amazing truth teller, I can tell, and a voice that certainly is needed in different institutions. So I hope that folks will reach out to you and get you in there so that you can help drive change that was so badly needed. And thank you again for joining us today.
I appreciate the invitation. Thank you both.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right. We'll see you all next time.